I don't know if you want to just
Yeah.
characterize it,
Yeah.
just what you're doing now as
Yeah.
far as.
Well, let me just start by saying this, just to emphasize some of the things Mr. Carey just said. I, it's hard enough losing your child in such a mindless act as a shooting. He was the victim of a shooting in this particular case. But I think perhaps it's even worse knowing that your child's life could have been saved if first responders, in this case paramedics, did what they were supposed to do, did what they were trained to do. I think their conduct was not just negligent, was not just reckless, but definitely disgraceful. And that's me putting it mildly. And here's why it's disgraceful. It was disgraceful because you had members of the public. From our count, we've counted at least 5 people in our investigation so far, and there were a lot of them, screaming, begging, and appealing to the paramedics to do their job, that this young man was alive. So if the members of the public figured out he wasn't dead, my question, I think the question of the family is, what in the world were the paramedics doing? And then someone put a sheet over his face, which obviously, I think common sense can tell us all, that obviously blocked his breathing tube. And what is particularly offensive so far is the narrative coming from the Chicago police and the Chicago Fire Department that we've been reading and watching in the media, where they've started 2 lines of arguments. The first line of arguments is he was going to die anyway, to capture what they're basically saying. He was already catastrophically injured. He was going to die. There was no point. As if that's a way of justifying the ridiculousness of their conduct. And the reality of that situation is, as Eric pointed out, they are not doctors. They are not surgeons. They don't make that call. When you come on scene as a trained paramedic or as a trained first responder, I would think and I would hope the most injured person gets lifted up first. You don't put a sheet over his face. And the second line of argument that we keep seeing is this argument, it's almost like a slight nudge towards he was a violent guy. Let's call a spade a spade. He may have been in a gang. We found a gun near him. Ridiculous. This is a Evanston high school grad, a football player, loved music, and you've heard from the family, no trouble at all. All of a sudden, the day the paramedics make a mistake, he becomes a gangbanger. Ridiculous. I think that's even more offensive. And none of those things will wash away the mistakes they made. And their whole job as first responders was to respond, and quite frankly, they didn't respond. They didn't do anything. Thankfully, members of the public were there to call their attention to it. And it's not just the paramedics. I want to make this very clear. Police officers on scene, they're trained in basic first aid administration. What were they doing? Who came on scene first? Who inspected the boy? Aaron on the ground. Who talked to him? Who checked his pulse? Who checked his breathing? Who engaged him in conversation? Who relayed information to other police officers or paramedics or dispatch? Who did anything? Did someone come and say he's already dying? Or he's already dying and he has a gun next to him? So, you know what? Put a sheet over him? I don't know. And so these are the questions that we have. It's okay. What exactly happened? Because this is just, like I said, to put it mildly, absolutely appalling and disgraceful. It's a disgrace. No other way to put it. And 100, as far as we are concerned, as we sit here today, I have no doubt, based on what Eric told me, based on his communication with the hospital staff that talked to the family after he died, the doctor was very clear, based on what the family is telling me, that the main issue was a lack of oxygen. And it takes a split second to save a life. They had more. They had at least an hour. And to make matters worse, a sheet was over his face, impeding his breathing. And so that's where we are right now. And in terms of actions, I've sent out a spoliation letter, a notice to preserve any and all evidence, forensic evidence, records, documents, to the Chicago Fire Department and the Chicago Police Department, to let them know to preserve everything. If they feel there was a gun next to Aaron, want to see forensics. We don't believe there was, just to make that clear. And so that's our main goal right now. This is not about, just to make this absolutely clear, this case right now, it's about finding answers for the family, because it's outrageous, it's ridiculous, and that's our main focus right now. They should preserve the evidence, and they should start communicating with the family and letting us know, and the general public, because the public has a right to know. If first responders in the city of Chicago are responding but not really responding, that's a problem for everyone. That's a danger for everyone. If first responders are responding and saying, well, here's the rule. If we think you're already dying, even though we're not doctors, well, we're not going to respond to you. That's a problem for everyone. And so those are the questions we have, and those are the answers we want and demand rightfully in this particular case. There's a young man here today who reached out to the family, and the family has given him permission just to say something brief,
Yes.
because he was in a very similar position. I think you want to come over here? There's it.
Tell me your name and spell your name.
How you doing? My name is Raekwon, spelled Raekwon, last name Harris. And I was a previous victim of gun violence a little over a year ago. That was kind of like a very similar situation. Practically, like, my relation was, what brought me to was the comments I was reading, and the problem of first responders considering them like dead, seeing the sheet. The same thing happened, like, in a way with me, just without the sheet. You know, I was shot, and as officers arrived on the scene, I guess the call.
Where were you shot?
I was shot in the back of my head. I still have the bullet, resides in my neck now, you know, but I'm happy to be alive, you know, and that's what brought me, because it's sad to see what happened. But as I was shot, I drove myself away from the scene, you know, like 8 blocks away probably, detrimentally, to a corner store, got in the store, called for police, didn't come. I guess someone else called and reported a different way. They came. Where's the sergeant that was shot? I'm laying bleeding out, gasping. There's no sergeant shot. Just please, can you get me to the hospital? They're standing around waiting. No EMS was there at the moment. So that was another reason. So, like, if the call's been made multiple, why is no one here? That's all I kept procrastinating. Like, can someone come? Just please, just get me to the hospital. I don't want to die. That was my only words. I was very conscious. I never passed out. I was conscious during the whole process. But in the process of it, the officer come, the EMS come. They was questioning whether to treat me right now or let's just wait it out. Like, it was literally like questioning. I'm sitting there listening to the officers talk. Well, is we going to leave him right here for a while or what? Are we going to take him? That was like the most dire thing that I ever heard. Like, I sat there listening to my life get debated on. You know, eventually people made it on the scene, like, he's still alive, get him away, you know, and I guess they realized there's so much people around, everybody around, like, let's go. And, you know, they got me there, and they did what they had to do to at least stabilize me and keep me here, you know, and that's what brings me, because I seen the sorrow. Like, it's just bad. For people to think that someone is dead from a gunshot, I was not, but they proclaimed, like, he's not going to survive, you know. That's not the way you do nobody. No one.
So when you
Thank
were shot, you were laying on the ground and...
Yes, I was shot. I was laying there, and I'm looking. Like, I couldn't hear them, but I'm, like, looking over them, because they're standing, like, right over my head, and they're talking, like, above me on what they're going to be, what they're about to do at the moment.
Just to be clear, you said you couldn't hear them. Do you mean you couldn't hear them or see them?
I couldn't see them, but I could hear them. You know, I could hear them right over my head. I just couldn't see directly who the people were that were standing there at the moment. But I heard the talk.
Do you still have a scar?
Yes, ma'am. I have a scar. I don't know if it'll be able to see, but it's like, it's closed in now. It's a scar right here. And the bullet resides right here between my ear and my bone fracture. As you can see right here, this is the picture from the gunshot wound that I put on the story, because I seen it on Facebook. That's how I was able to realize it besides knowing this one. And it all comes to that I know this man besides this being his son. Like, I found out that just recently.
It was also Chicago.
Yes, ma'am.
When
Southside
did it
Chicago.
happen?
January 8th of 2017.
Where was it?
55th and Laughlin, but they reported the scene at 5500 South Racine. Thank you all.
And the reason I brought him up here, apart from the similarities in terms of this failure to act, the failure to come to the aid, is very simple. First of all, he's alive. He's talking. He's communicating. So, again, it stresses the point, paramedics cannot be making decisions as to who's going to live and who's going to die in their non-medical opinion. He's here today. So a person can survive a gunshot wound. But the problem is, Aaron was never given that opportunity. You know? And by what he's saying, it seems that there is a systematic failure in responding. You know, why is there always a delay if there's a gunshot wound to the head? Why is there always a delay if a paramedic makes a non-medical decision that I don't think this guy's going to make it anyways? And of course, it's more egregious in this case because they put a sheet over his head. And I'm referring to Aaron's case. And I just want to emphasize also what I'd said before. The police officers also have questions to answer. What were they doing too?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can you just say your name so we have it on the microphone?
Oh yes, I'm Nenye Uche, Nenye, last name Uche. And this is Heather Waddell. Heather, you want to introduce?
Heather, Heather, Widdell, Widell.
And Mr. John Collins is also an attorney.
Attorney John Collins, Johncollins.
Okay.
Are you just still trying to decide whether or not to take legal action at this point, just because it's so early?
Yeah, I don't think there's a time for everything. And right now, the main focus of this family and this team is to get answers. Ask questions and get answers. I think, like I said before, it's not just about them. If there's a pattern of conduct where the paramedics are not, and not just the paramedics, first responders are not doing what they're supposed to do, I think everyone in this city deserves to know, you know. And so that's really our focus right now. Yeah.
Is it safe to say you're considering legal action?
Oh, it depends on their course of conduct and what we discover.
But it's a possibility.
It is a possibility, absolutely. Absolutely.
To take steps to make sure that the systematic failures that you mentioned before come to a halt, because this is too much to happen to one son, too much to happen to obviously two. These are just two that we know about. How often is this happening with young men, young women, anyone conscious, hearing what's going on and not being helped? One is too many.
Yeah.
Yeah, they picked the wrong kid.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And can you just email that picture that you showed on the phone, email it to everybody?
And I'll email pictures of the young man.